Okay, class, so today we're going to talk about this learning target. We're going to define major events and policies enacted near the end of the Civil War. And we're going to start with talking about Andrew Johnson's Reconstruction. So, if you remember in our last class, we talked about how Andrew Johnson had become the new president of the United States. So, who can tell me what happened? Sean?
Abraham Lincoln was unfortunately assassinated by John Wilkes Booth.
That's right, he was assassinated, and so the vice president had to step up. And so what do we know about these two political parties? We talked about this in our last class too. Anyone remember?
I believe Lincoln was a Republican and Johnson was a Democrat.
Right, good job. So we know that they were very diametrically opposed people. They had extremely different points of view on how to run the country. So Andrew Johnson took over as president of the United States, and handling Reconstruction and dealing with the South, who had just surrendered in the Civil War, fell onto him. So, one of the first things he did was, first of all, who can tell me what an executive order is? Does anyone have an idea? Want to take a guess? Sean, again?
It's an order that the president signs using his executive powers to
Right.
pass a law.
Absolutely. And so, using his executive order, he started with the first one, which was called amnesty and pardon. So what he did was he pardoned every single member of the Confederacy so long as they swore allegiance to the United States on the Constitution. And then, Shane, can you read that top bullet under amnesty and pardon for me?
Of course. Anyone with assets of $20,000 or more applying for a personal pardon.
Right. So what do you think of that? What are some of the possible consequences? What do you think maybe Andrew Johnson was trying to do with this? Anyone have any ideas? So he wanted people with, very wealthy people, to apply for a personal pardon. What do you think that might have, what might have he been trying to do?
Trying to reunify the nation after 4 years of a disastrous war.
Right, right. He is trying to reunify the nation, but
He's trying to get on a personal account with those people and get them in his pocket.
very good, Colin. Yeah, he's trying to really get these people on his side. He wants to build these relations with some of the more affluent members of the Confederacy, or ex-Confederacy at this point. So the second thing he did was he started these constitutional conventions. So since all of the states were repatriated, they had to draft new constitutions for each state. And they could not violate the 13th Amendment. And does anyone want to guess why?
Slavery is bad.
Well, slavery's bad, absolutely. I agree with you. But the 13th, it was an amendment to the United States Constitution, which we know the states cannot supersede that, correct? They have to follow the United States Constitution. So, although they could not reintroduce slavery in the South, what do you think maybe the Southern states would try to do with these new constitutions? Anyone have a guess? Colin?
Find some other workaround, get cheap labor forces.
Right, that is one of the things they did, was they tried to keep labor as cheap as possible, especially with African Americans. What else? Think about social.
The Jim Crow laws.
Jim Crow laws, that was later on, but this definitely set the foundation for that kind of stuff. Anyone else have any ideas?
Not allowing African American owned properties.
Right, yeah, they didn't want them to own property. They were trying to do everything they could. They actually came up with something called, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, they were called the Black Codes. Now, these were codes that basically made sure that African Americans had no rights. It wouldn't allow them to vote, own property, anything like that. It wouldn't allow citizenship. And so, let's take a second. Let's do this worksheet I handed you guys together. And I just want you to get a visual idea of kind of how Andrew Johnson's policies had these effects as we move down this flow chart here. So what were the two things he started with? Someone want to give me one that we just talked about?
Personal pardons.
The personal pardons, and what was it? Amnesty and pardon, right?
Amnesty, yeah.
So we put amnesty and pardon, and let's just start there. Let's work down this left side. So what was amnesty and pardon like in general?
Pardoned all the Confederates and sought out the ones who had over 20,000 in assets.
Right.
As long as they said they were loyal, no longer loyal to the Confederacy.
Absolutely. So let's put pardon all Confederates. And then maybe on this right side, let's put more specifically a personal pardon with anyone who had $20,000 or more in assets. And so all this, these two, really led to what? What was he working on? What was he trying to build here?
Relations with Confederate leaders, well, ex-Confederate leaders.
Relations, yeah, with ex-Confederates and support. I'm running out of room here, but that's okay. Okay, so let's go to the right side. What was the other thing that the states had to do? Now that they
Constitutional convention.
Constitutional conventions, good job. And then so first of all, what could the constitutional conventions not do?
Break the 13th Amendment.
They could not break the 13th Amendment. And so what were we just talking about? What did they institute? What did they
Black
call it?
codes.
The Black Codes. And the goal of this was what's down here? What were they trying to accomplish with those?
Continue to oppress Black African American.
Good job. Well said, Colin. Okay, well that will wrap up this lesson. We're going to continue later. We're going to talk more about Reconstruction, and we're going to talk about what the Republican Party started to do to kind of counteract some of these things that Andrew Johnson implemented. So good job today. This will be your exit ticket, so as we leave, we'll hand them in.